guys. So you may have noticed this isn't the usual great lighting that we usually have, and also Zane and Lacey are not here. It's because I'm making a video today that I didn't think I was gonna make. I'm making something that, well, okay, so here's the deal. I saw Halloween Ends. And for those of you who've seen it, you know exactly what I mean when I say I was startled by what it was. And just generally conflicted about it. And I realized that even though I wasn't going to make a video about this, that I needed to. And then I also realized that if I wanted to make a video about it in a timely manner, I couldn't wait for the rest of the crew, you know, the rest of the boys, so to speak, Lacey and Zane, to do it, because by the time that we'd have it done and edited like we usually do, it'd be like a week out. So right now, I'm just going to tell you guys my thoughts. I'm going to get into some of it, and, well, all right. So Halloween Ends. Okay. So here's the deal. I'm a gigantic Halloween fan. I've been a huge fan of the franchise for years. When I was a kid, my brother showed me the 2007, or maybe it was 2009, I can't remember off the top of my head, but the Rob Zombie remake. And I was horrified by it as a kid. I had seen, really, as a kid, I was watching horror movies I shouldn't have. My first 3 horror movies were 2 Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, New Beginning, and the remake from 2003, and then the Halloween remake by Rob Zombie. So I was introduced to the most aggressive of horror at the very top. And the thing that I liked more about this than Texas Chainsaw at the time, and the reason why I gravitated towards it, was I liked the other elements. I liked the parts of Halloween that Rob Zombie didn't add. No offense. I love the Rob Zombie movies now, but as a kid, that stuff really freaked me out. But I liked the concept, and I thought it was really scary in a whole different way. It was kind of menacing. But I ended up going back. I found a love for all the old Halloween films. I started picking them up that way, and now I'm just like one of the biggest fans ever. And the only movies that I've seen are in theaters is the second Rob Zombie Halloween, and then this trilogy, this most recent trilogy, because I'm only 27. So a lot of those movies I was a kid when they came out in theaters. I just wanted to say that this movie, I agree with people when they say they like the 2018 one better. I totally agree. I think the 2018 movie, aside from a couple of issues, especially with like the new Dr. Loomis or whatever they wanted to call him, that stuff was a little tough. I'm not going to lie to you. It wasn't easy to watch at those moments. But for the most part, the 2018 movie is a total triumph. It's a great return of Jamie Lee Curtis in the role. It's a really great conclusion. And if you just watched Halloween 1978 and Halloween 2018, or H40 as it's referred to in the fan community, it ties things up in a way that I think that this trilogy might have failed to do. But when people say they dislike this movie more than Halloween Kills, which was the sequel that came after, I can't see what you mean. I mean, Kills was just fucking terrible, but aside from that, I think we have to consider a couple of things when approaching Halloween Ends. So, first of all, I agree with people when they say that it doesn't work as a trilogy. It doesn't work as a trilogy ender, especially. It's kind of got the new Star Wars vibe to it, where it's like, the first one is a rehash of the old stuff, but really good. And then the second one, you know, people are varying opinions about. But the differentiator is that the third movie, in my opinion, I think that this movie's better than the second one was. I really do. And here's a couple of reasons why. I think that the idea of, instead of it being a slasher so much, because let's face it, Halloween Ends is not a slasher. It's a psychological horror thriller with some hyper violence and slasher scenes in it, but it doesn't operate as a slasher. There's not a kill for the first hour of the movie, and I know because after I watched it the first time and I knew I was going to talk about it, I watched it a second time and I double checked. There's not a kill other than one child over a banister of stairs the whole movie. There's not a whole lot of slashing in the movie. And then when it does come about, it's not really a big part of the story, which is so weird. This movie also is not a movie. All the posters and all the trailers would lead you to believe that this movie is about Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laurie Strode, and Michael Myers. And it's not. It has nothing to do with them, really, except for like the last 10 minutes. That last 10 minutes was it was something else. I was really taken back by a few choices that were made that I thought would be cool in concept, but just didn't play out correctly. So when this movie was being made, it was supposed to be shot back to back with Halloween Kills and then Halloween Ends being shot at the same time, but COVID happened in the middle. So it ended up splitting the time. And what I'm to understand, although I don't know this specifically to be true, I've heard that the original concept was that Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends were going to take place in that same night, that it was going to be the whole trilogy happened in one Halloween, which is a lot of shit to happen in one afternoon, but whatever. And maybe that could have brought us a better conclusion out of the three if that was the case. I don't know. All I know is your movies have to work on an individual level, and Halloween Kills does not work. It does not work at all. Like, there's cool things in it, a couple of things, not much, and it doesn't work that well. For anybody, not for the people who wanted like a violent slasher, it's not good enough in that end. And for people who wanted like a decent story, maybe major fans of the franchise, it wasn't, none of it was there. It didn't have either. It was a regular Curse of Michael Myers. It wasn't good. Doesn't matter what cut you put out of it. So when the original next movie was supposed to take place in the same night, you think, oh, well, maybe that could have fixed those problems. I don't think it could have, but maybe it could have. But now we're living in a world where that did happen, and COVID interrupted the shooting. And as a result, I'm guessing that a lot of the script must have changed, especially since it's actually a time jump in the film. That tells me right away that they've completely gone away with what they had and went in a new direction. So this trilogy isn't all planned out. It's not like things from the third movie were earlier referenced in a larger way in the second and first. And I think if it would have, people might have liked it more. So for those of you who don't know, there's this character named Corey Cunningham in the movie. He's kind of like the main character. He's the guy that is followed more in the movie than Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael combined. So he's definitely the main character. And the idea is that he's this guy who, a year after the events of Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills, he is babysitting. He's getting ready to go off to college, make something of himself, and he's babysitting this kid on Halloween night who the parents are like warning him, like, oh, this kid's super afraid of everything. Like, don't let him get out or do anything. He'll wet his bed and all that shit. And actually, he's a little demon, which is usually how it goes with kids, but he's a total asshole and traps the guy in like an attic or something, and then the guy kicks him over the banister and like makes a Final Destination level like kill happen. For me, that was incredibly entertaining, and that's what I'm going for with a horror movie. I mean, I went to see this with a huge audience, and everybody was having a great time that first moment. Now the audience grew against the movie towards the end of it, but during the opening scene, everybody was having fun with that moment. So when it does another time jump to like present day or whatever, and Corey, the guy who's the babysitter who killed the kid, and now his life's falling apart. Nobody's going to accept him in any college because he had to go to court and prove that, like, oh, hey, I didn't kill this kid. And some people don't believe him. Some people think he got off and stuff. So there's like a general taboo about him in the town. And Haddonfield seems like a terrible place to live. Not only do you have a shitty locally syndicated radio show, but like there's just mean people there who are not very forgiving of anybody. And that sucks. But that's what he's dealing with. He's dealing with being called a child killer or a pedophile by random high school bullies, even though he's not a high schooler, and things of that nature. And he then, at some point, oh, and by the way, during this, a B plot, I call it a B plot because the movie's not about her, unfortunately enough. Laurie Strode has kind of decided to live her normal life, and now she's living with Allison, her granddaughter, and they're like trying to get on, trying to get on with their lives. Laurie's writing a book. Allison's working as a nurse or something like that. I'm sorry, I didn't know exactly what the job. It seemed like a nurse, and they're getting on with their lives, so to speak, but they still deal with townspeople saying things to them like, oh, he was egged on to kill by you fucking are responsible for this, because people always want to point a finger and whatnot. She ends up seeing Corey, just magically falling in love with him somehow, and they get together, and he ends up being a sick puppy. He has all this trauma from everything that happened, and somehow in the midst of all this ridiculousness, he ends up in a position where he's faced with Michael. Michael looks him in the eye, maybe something supernatural happened. Maybe that was like them noticing in each other's eyes that they both had like the killer eyes. Maybe there was like a transference of power or something. But there's like a moment, like if you could throw over some like sexy music over that moment, I'm telling you, like Michael spends most of this movie getting it on with Corey Cunningham. They kill people together, like almost like a weird threesome kind of deal. It's odd. It's an odd choice. But the Michael part of it is kind of cool, and I think people are trashing that part too, where Michael's looking older, and it's like finally that passage of time, the 40 plus years, is having some kind of effect. And he's also been living in the sewer, I'm assuming eating rats like he did in Resurrection, just walking around in the sewer, maybe eating people, according to the homeless guy. I'm not really sure, but whatever. But he looks like swamp scum. I mean, he looks like a mythical old creature almost. He's covered in all this grime, and his mask is kind of withered, and he himself is weak and old and feeble. And I don't know, like, for me as a fan of the franchise, I liked an evolution of the character. I think that it could have been cool if it was handled differently. My basic takeaway, because at the end of this movie, the Corey Cunningham character is officially killing people. He's helping Michael kill people because, I don't know, Michael saw something in him, and he finally has that snap, and he's like got the evil in his eyes, and they make a huge mention of it throughout the movie. Like I said, this isn't a review. I just want to talk about some of my feelings. So maybe one day I'll get more into specifics, but if you haven't seen the movie, you should see it. It's fucking crazy. But what I want to talk about is how I would change things. Definitely wouldn't just have like the last 10 minutes be a fight between Laurie and Michael that ends with Michael being thrown in a gigantic meat grinder or trash compactor or whatever it is. That was insane. Like, I don't even know how they're going to try to defend that moment. The fact that it happened completely out of nowhere, it just doesn't make any sense. Especially since there was no, like, Michael's not in this movie. He's really not. He does like 4 things, and most of them are accompanied by a young, like, handsome dude driving around town with Allison to like the music from Drive. It looks like a Nicholas Winding Refn film. I've heard people say it looks like Drive. It does. At times this movie feels like Drive. That's why I say it's not a slasher. It's more of like that psychological horror thriller. I think I'm coming to the conclusion that I don't love the movie, but I like it. I think that it could have been so much better though. And it could have been the issue is that they took a big swing, and a lot of it really worked and a lot of it really did not. But the parts of it that didn't work really came, in my opinion, more from poor planning. You know, like, I just think that if there was a crescendo to this, like if there was a build-up. So, for instance, this Corey Cunningham character, he's the main character of the movie. He's introduced in this movie. And we just had a whole trilogy building to this movie. We just had 2 movies prior to this building to this one. And none of the characters that made up those past movies are important to this one, really. Other than Laurie and Allison, everybody else is just kind of like, yeah, whatever. I heard that shit happen. That's wild. That seems crazy to me. There was as much as I hated Halloween Kills, there was definitely a through line, you know? Like, there was several characters affected by what was going on at the time. Now it's just kind of like, we don't even remember when he did this. Are we talking about the one from the 70s, or are we talking about how he did that a couple of years ago? That's kind of how it feels. But I think that they could have made it better, and here's a couple of ways I would have done that. So first off, the boyfriend character, I believe he dies in Kills. I mean, I have to rewatch it to remember, but I'm pretty sure there was like a brutal scene where like his neck and everything's being slammed against a stairway and shit like that. I'm pretty sure he died. How much better would it have been if at the end of Halloween Kills, but when Michael goes to attack him, you know, everybody from the prior movie is kind of waiting for this comeuppance, but then as Halloween Kills goes on and you see that he's had a bit of a character involvement, you're like, oh wait, I don't want him to get his comeuppance. And like, people were thinking about him getting fucked as they came into the sequel when they saw him in a trailer. They're like, oh, thank God. Like, they're going to kill that asshole who threw her phone in bean dip or Jello or whatever the fuck it was in the first movie. and then he dies, and like that's an interesting choice to make in Halloween Kills, to like go through with exactly what people at that point in time you had like moved them against. I think that kill was great, but I think it would have been better for the overall story if at that moment when Michael came up to him, was ready to kill him, that eye scene happens. In this movie, the one that happened between him and Corey happens between that boyfriend and him. Because he was shown that he had this dark streak. It was shown that he had some childhood trauma through stories at like the dinner table and like talking about his family, and not to mention like his girlfriend tried to kiss his best friend tried to kiss his girlfriend. Like there's tons of stuff that could lead to somebody, having a darkness in them, and maybe he would see it. Michael would see it early on, and then we as an audience would be weirded out by the fact that Michael specifically let him go. And we would theorize about it for an entire year until Halloween ends, where then you reintroduce him. It's a year after he's trying to get his life together, as he feels like he missed an opportunity. Like he has a near-death experience that completely changes his worldview. Now he's getting ready to go to college. He's like well put together. He babysits this kid, and that's why the trauma of the Michael attack affects him so terribly and scares him so much that he accidentally kills this child. And then you just continue the movie with this better, more developed character who also already has a romantic tie to the main character, and would make more sense for her to just suddenly be into, instead of how she like sees Corey and she's like, yeah, I love him. I love him more than anybody. It just doesn't, it would have been so much better if we had prepped that moment, if we had understood like, okay, that romantic interest was already there, and now she's into him because they've both been through something, and like they have that damage together. Shared trauma, unfortunately, is a great catalyst for romance and story, even though it's not always a good thing. So that would have been such a better use of all the characters involved. Now, I don't have a problem with the guy who played Corey Cunningham. I feel like that actor did a great job. I'm just speaking in the terms of, we had a whole trilogy that should have some kind of tie through continuity, and it doesn't. I mean, at the end of Halloween Kills, the whole movie, the town's like every single time he kills, he gets stronger. And then it instantly starts the next movie with him being notably weaker. It just doesn't make any sense. But at least with this, it's like, okay, well then you could pause in your mind, like maybe when he saw him, it also like gave away his strength, it like passed upon this power. There'd be more arguments to be had. I feel like people would have an argument that this was a better movie. It's just the casting of this random person to entirely develop now, it doesn't make any sense. And it's most of the movie. Like, I like the fact that we did something different. I think it's cool that there's a Halloween movie out there that's not even like a slasher, other than Season of the Witch. I get that Season of the Witch isn't technically a slasher, but it's also like, doesn't have Michael in it. It's a Halloween movie, but whatever. This would have been the first movie with Michael in it where it's not a slasher, it's something entirely different. And I don't know, I thought that was cool. I don't think that it's a way that they should go going forward with the more movies that will inevitably come out. I just think in a world where we're always complaining about more of the same, it was an interesting choice to do something different. It just could have been done so much better. Like, I would have liked it so much better if, at the very end of the movie, instead of it being a fight between Laurie and Michael and blah, 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 like Laurie finally vanquishes Michael, right? But then this other character comes around, gets Laurie, knocks her out of the franchise. I know a lot of people wouldn't like that, and people would be very upset and be like, our final girl will die that way. But it would be a nice establishment of like, this is the new character. Maybe they could make more, maybe they wouldn't. I wouldn't advise it, especially after this box office, but it would have been such a better ending than a random shoehorned in fight that, like, granted, there's satisfying moments in it, of course. I mean, if you're a major fan of Halloween, then you're like, yeah, great, these are the characters that I wanted to see get in a fight. This was the trailer and the posters, but it's not the movie. So it's the issue of marketing. It's the issue of continuity. And the thing is, though, if it was set up the way that I would set them up, or even a lot of other people talked about recutting it, making the Corey Cunningham stuff a lot smaller. Like, there's so many different ways they could have recut this movie, rewritten this movie, and like kept a lot of these same idea and concepts. That would have been good, like really good, at least for the franchise, considering what Kills was. But it's a disappointment because honestly, it's sloppy. Like that's what it is at the end of the day. It's a little sloppy, and the way it just has such a big part of the story feel like it could be taken out of this movie and exist as its own movie. That's a critique that people always have about it. And I think that that critique is fair because it just wasn't blended enough in with the rest of the trilogy or even the franchise for that matter. But there was a lot of cool symbolism that was set up, you know, like there was different things in the background that were really specific. Like I know that there was triangles on the ice machine that he got slammed into when he got that cut that later got infected and like showed that like he was going bad. Those triangles are also like a symbol of like transformation. That's why you see them in movies like Harry Potter and stuff during like important scenes. People think it's the Illuminati, but you should probably listen to Christopher Columbus on the commentaries and stuff, but not the point. I just think that there was a better opportunity to be had with this movie. I think that it's definitely not as bad as everybody says it is. I think it's pretty entertaining in its badness, and like there's stuff that wasn't supposed to be funny that is very funny in this movie. And there's stuff that's funny in this movie that just is. Like, it does work. There are parts that definitely work. But it wasn't prepared enough. It felt like it was out of nowhere. And when you contextualize it with the idea that this is Jamie Lee Curtis's last time in the role, I don't know. I definitely have some mixed emotions. Because I want to embrace something that takes a different direction for the franchise. Especially when it's a better, different direction than we've gone in the past. And also, I want to acknowledge that, like, whenever they try to end the franchise, or whenever it's the end of a supposed timeline or movie line of the franchise, the last movie's always the worst one. Like, Halloween 3, or if you just want to, like, whatever you want to call it, the Season of the Witch, whatever, that was kind of a conclusion of the idea that John Carpenter's involvement would have with it becoming an anthology and stuff like that. People don't like that movie. I like it, maybe not for the right reasons. But then the other thing goes with like Curse of Michael Myers was like the end of the Jamie Lloyd saga. That movie was one of the worst in the franchise. Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's last movie, terrible. So it's just like they're not good at making conclusions. And I think that this movie was good, but maybe one of the least conclusive. Even though it crushed Michael Myers in the end, it was just like, okay, but there was just that. I guess it was conclusive, but the whole movie wasn't, just the last like 10 minutes. I don't know. I want to embrace it and I want to like it, and I'm definitely going to see it again. It'll definitely be one that I revisit because there's stuff in it. There's stuff in there that I like. I like when things are changed a little bit. But it wasn't earned. This jump wasn't earned. It feels like a wild swing in comparison to like how a trilogy should be, where it's building a momentum to something different. I don't know. I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens. With the fans, you know? I feel like I'm dragging on too long. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching this video. Like I said, I really didn't even plan on talking about this movie. It just got stuck in my head, and I just kept thinking, wow, I need to talk about this. Like, I have to talk about it today. So I just turned on the cameras, turned on the lights, no plan, no script, just wanted to speak about it. I'm sorry if this video was super annoying for you guys, but it was therapeutic as fuck for me. So thank you guys for listening. Leave down in the comments what you wish would have happened with the movie, whether you liked it or not, your defenses or arguments against it. Listen, I'm an open-minded guy, and I'm also a huge fan of the franchise who welcomes in people having drastically different opinions. If you think that everything I said is totally wrong, I embrace that and respect it as a Halloween fan. Doesn't mean we have to agree, but I totally respect that. So peace out, guys. Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to subscribe, all that good stuff. If you guys like these kind of videos where I just ramble and talk shit, I don't think you will, but if you do, I'll make more. All right, kids. Peace out.